Watch right now on the Front News Project. In Kyiv, terrorist Russia is killing Ukrainian children again. The enemy will answer for everything. A shock for the Russian army. Ukrainian drones over Mariupol. Exclusive footage. And what else? Putin is preparing a new invasion. Who is the next victim of Russian aggression? Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front line. Watch right now. Greetings, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we begin right away with the main topic. A brutal attack lasting an entire day. Terrorist Russia launched a fierce attack across all of Ukraine. But Kyiv was at the epicenter of the strike. 24 people were killed, including 3 children. The details of this genocide of the Ukrainian people are in the report by our colleagues from the television news service.
Dozens of destroyed apartments, smashed cars, and damaged infrastructure. The capital is recovering after yet another massive Russian attack. In the Darnitsky district of the capital, an apartment building entrance was destroyed as a result of the attack. In this panel residential building, 34 apartments were destroyed. At the moment, the search and rescue operation is ongoing. Units of the State Emergency Service are working at the scene. Rescuers are clearing the collapsed structures. They are doing this both manually and with the help of special equipment. Service dogs have also been brought in to assist with the search. 28 people have been rescued, but there may still be people trapped under the rubble. Preliminarily, law enforcement reports indicate that more than 20 people are missing.
There have already been cases when people thought there were more victims, but fortunately some were with relatives, colleagues, or friends. Therefore, according to our info, there may still be people under the rubble.
Civilians also helped rescuers pull people out from under the debris. 18-year-old Ivan rushed to the destroyed building where his friends live immediately after the strike.
We clearly heard a woman screaming for help from underneath the thick rubble right near the rescuer. I ran up to him and started helping to clear the debris. But we didn't succeed. We went in from the other side and started digging from top to bottom.
Were you able to save the woman?
Yes, we managed to.
According to preliminary information from the State Emergency Service, the destruction of the building was caused by a direct missile strike. As of now, it is known that 24 people have died in this apartment building. More than 50 people have been injured.
It was very loud, it was very frightening. At that moment, I felt as if all the glass was flying, everything was flying. And that was it. After that, we went outside. My balconies are closed, but the kitchen window is shattered. And that's all. Then I saw smoke, flames, everything was burning.
My husband's mother is in that building.
My mother. And
where did she live?
Right there, where there is no entrance.
there, where that emptiness is.
A relief center has been set up nearby. Here you can file a police report about property damage. More than 100 such reports have already been submitted. Psychologists from the State Emergency Service and the police are also working on site, talking to the victims and supporting the relatives of those who died, and those whose loved ones are still being searched for. These are ordinary residential buildings, a school, a veterinary clinic, and other purely civilian infrastructure.
And now we move to the long-suffering Pokrovsky direction of the front. The enemy is becoming more brutal here as well. In the Pokrovsky direction, the aggressor carried out 24 attacks. The occupiers tried to advance in the areas of the settlements of Novopavlivka, Volne, Kucheryavy Yar, Beletske, Rodinske, Novoaleksandrivka, and Hryshain. Udakhna, Serivka, Novonikolaivka, and Novopodhorodna. 2 intense combat clashes are currently still ongoing at this moment. Meanwhile, Putin is being systematically deceived by his own high-ranking generals, Aksim. They take full advantage of the elderly, backward dictator's complete lack of modern internet skills and feed him false information about the actual situation at the front. Thus, Putin is convinced that the Russian army is advancing victoriously on the verge of fully capturing Donbass. Only a few months remain. We will demonstrate clearly that this does not correspond to the state of affairs at all. Let's watch. Russian generals are deceiving Putin.
I do not see anything particularly out of the ordinary here.
Despite the catastrophic situation at the front, the Ministry of Defense of the aggressor country reports to the Kremlin about imaginary captures of more and more territories. Meanwhile, the Russian army is supposedly winning so actively right now, yet their actual rate of advance over the past 3 months has become the lowest recorded since the year 2023. According to military analysts, if this current trend continues into the future, it will likely take Russia many decades to fully occupy the entire Donbas region.
They love to watch the black sky, that's clear. And they don't want to communicate with their leadership, that's how it is. Chapuis is selling them only war.
Nevertheless, Russian commanders successfully persuaded Putin that their troops could achieve a complete capture of Donbas by autumn, which apparently greatly encouraged the bunker dweller.
He was convinced of this by his own generals who claimed that supposedly the front is collapsing for Ukraine. Soon there will be no soldiers left to defend the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. That is precisely the reason. Engaging in negotiations at this point is not a realistic option.
But first of all, this puts an end to all the speculation, fantasies and discussions about how peace suddenly became closer, that there is some kind of secret agreement that Xi Jinping and Trump will negotiate peace in Ukraine, that Putin and Trump will secretly agree on something. That's it. Game over.
But in reality, the Russian army is simply not capable of capturing Donbas by force, which means the Kremlin decided to acquire new territories without any fighting at all.
President Volodymyr Zelensky must now issue a formal and immediate order to the armed forces of Ukraine to cease all military operations and fire, and to completely withdraw all personnel and equipment from the territory of Donbas and the Russian regions.
Then, supposedly, the bunker dweller is ready to sit down at the negotiating table and give the order to cease fire.
I think things are coming to an end, but still, this is a serious matter. We have never been closed to negotiations. Never.
But all of this is just another strategic maneuver by Putin, military analysts firmly insist. Having taken well-fortified Ukrainian outposts in Donbas, without a fight, Pina will immediately give the order to prepare for a new offensive.
Vladimir Putin is currently hoping that if the operation is completed, once he successfully establishes full control of Donbas, he will be able to broaden the scope of his demands, which in particular will specifically encompass the entirety of the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions.
Let's be honest, even the bunker dweller himself, only a few moments after talking about being ready to sit down at the negotiating table, he now openly and clearly admits that he has absolutely no intention of talking, let alone ending the war.
The armed forces need to direct their full and undivided attention toward the concluding declarations and strategic positions of the opposing forces within the broader framework of the special military operation.
Putin's real goal, at the very least, is all of left bank Ukraine, as well as Kyiv and Odessa, according to Western media, citing sources in the Kremlin. However, the Russian generals, while they may nod along with the bunker dweller, in reality do not believe in such a scenario, even hypothetically. The same goes for the Kremlin elites. They are actively trying to dissuade Pina from continuing the special military operation. Maybe they themselves, the smartest and most cynical among them, secretly off-camera, snicker at all this. And the spirit of the late Chechetov floats around there saying they got played like kittens. In reality, they themselves probably find it funny. Everyone except the most thick-headed. They understand that it's nonsense, that it's pure fantasy, but nevertheless they keep waving this piece of paper around. But for the bunker dweller, it all goes in one ear and out the other as they gossip in the Kremlin. Putin has once again become obsessed with the idea of taking Kyiv in 3 days. And the only thing that might convince him to abandon this scheme are Ukrainian drones destroying the remnants of his military-industrial complex and oil refineries. Is that giving them their due? The Ukrainian armed forces have excelled at this. Yes, so much so that with each passing day, it becomes harder for Russian generals to lie to the old man about victories at the front against the backdrop of constant air raid sirens in Moscow and burning oil ports deep in the rear.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the southern Slobozhansky sector of the front. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the southern Slobozhansky direction, the enemy attacked our unit's positions 16 times. In the areas of the settlements of Lyman, Rybalkina, Okremivka, and Staritsia. And now Putin is once again turning to nuclear threats. Deeply stung by his failed parade, the bunker dictator made the decision to test his Sarmat missile, and solemnly promised that the unparalleled complex would very soon indeed be put on combat duty. In addition, the bunker dweller, of course, is once again threatening the world with nuclear Orishniks and Poseidons. What is Putin trying to show the world with his nuclear club? We'll tell you in the next segment.
Once again, it's not something new. Putin has decided to rattle his so-called unparalleled weapon. This time, he didn't pull out the Orishnik from his nuclear arsenal, but rather the pride of the Russian defense industry. The RS-28 Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile.
First of all, this is the most powerful missile system in the world. Secondly, and this is the main thing, the missile can travel not only along a ballistic trajectory, but also along a suborbital one. Thirdly, this makes it possible to achieve a range of over 35,000 kilometers.
Putin went on about the Sarmat in response to a report on yet another successful missile test.
Respected Comrade Supreme Commander-in-Chief, today at exactly 11:15 a.m., the strategic missile forces of the Russian Federation successfully carried out a test launch of the newest heavy liquid-fueled intercontinental ballistic missile known as the Sarmat. The launch was successful. The launch objective was accomplished.
What the objective was, however, remained unknown. Obviously, the Kremlin wanted the Sarmat to actually take off this time, unlike in 2024, when during testing the missile exploded in the silo and blew up the Plesetsk range. Or in 2025, when the Sarmat had just lifted off from the ground and boom. Judging by the new video, this time the Sarmat actually flew off somewhere, and this is the second more or less successful launch of the missile, which has been under development in Russia since 2011.
There is no evidence that this missile is actually capable of flying or of bypassing air defense systems, and most importantly, of flying the declared distance. And of course with a payload. And the payload there could be, including nuclear warheads.
There are a lot of unanswered questions. Well, there are a lot, but that doesn't stop Putin from claiming that by the end of 2026, Sarmat will be put on combat duty and will protect Mother Russia.
By the end of this year, Sarmat will certainly be put on active combat duty status.
However, this is not the first such promise. Putin has been repeatedly making claims about combat duty since the year 2022. So whether Sarmat will actually be put on combat duty this year remains a very significant question.
By the end of this year, the very first such advanced system will be officially put on active combat duty. The first strategic Sarmat missile launchers will go on combat duty as planned. We have now practically and successfully completed all development work on the Sarmat, our sophisticated super heavy missile. The first serial-produced heavy ballistic Sarmat missiles have been delivered to the troops. We will soon provide a demonstration of them at their deployment areas while on combat duty. This year, we will officially place the system with the heavy intercontinental ballistic Sarmat missile on trial combat duty, and by the following year, it will be on full combat duty.
The real capabilities. No one knows the true capabilities of the Sarmat, and this is exactly what Putin is trying to exploit, knowing that no one will want to find out how far it can actually reach.
Rattling this weapon. What is Putin counting on? He's a classic FSB man, a security service operative. He thinks in terms of special operations. Essentially, he uses things like the Sarmat for this. He's testing the Western world's resolve. Pardon the slang. It's not even necessary to actually show that it flies or that it's really that advanced or effective. It's enough just to declare that it is so and show some kind of launch. This is an absolutely classic strategy of Putin and the Russian Federation, to present wishful thinking as reality.
Putin's particular need to present himself as a superpower has intensified because, essentially, the May 9th parade was disrupted. He couldn't celebrate the Victory Day festivities on a grand scale as the bunker dweller is used to. So now the compensation mechanism with a nuclear undertone has kicked in, and the Kremlin doesn't even try to hide this, openly referring to Sarmat as a means of deterrence.
The deployment of launchers with the Sarmat missile system will substantially strengthen and enhance the combat capabilities of the ground-based strategic nuclear forces in ensuring the effective destruction of targets and fulfilling strategic deterrence mission objectives.
But the deterrence practiced by the Kremlin is increasingly starting to look less like a strategy of strength and more like a strategy of fear. When real victories are lacking nuclear promises, loud claims and missiles are once again brought into play, which for now sounds more convincing than it actually flies.
And now, an analysis of the situation on the Mariupol front line. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred goal for Putin and his entire gang. Accordingly, the situation here is extremely tense. On the Kyiv front, there were 22 attacks by the occupiers in the areas of the settlements of Dobropolia, Zlahoda, Privolne, Vozdvizenka, Verkhnaya Tersa, Svetkova, Starokrainka, and Charivna. Right now, one battle is still ongoing. A shock for Russia. Ukrainian drones are already over Mariupol. Now, the forces of unmanned systems are focused on destroying Russian UAV warehouses and production facilities. And Ukrainian Hornets are truly terrifying Putin's propagandists and military experts. Be sure to watch our detailed investigative report on the drone war and the remarkable and undeniable strategic successes of the Ukrainian armed forces in it.
This is a strike on the Russian Army's unmanned systems command post in the occupied part of Kherson region. In the past month, such strikes have been happening more and more frequently. In addition to air bomb strikes, the Ukrainian armed forces are systematically carrying out deep strikes on Russian UAV and ammunition storage facilities, up to 200 kilometers deep, both on Russian territory and in temporarily occupied areas. The Ukrainian army is forced to relocate their ammunition and drone warehouses deep into the rear, which significantly complicates their logistics.
Atesh agents among the servicemen of the Russian armed forces are reporting a drastic change in the logistics of the enemy forces. Warehouses with drones and ammunition are rapidly being moved deeper away from the line of contact. Losses of warehouse facilities have forced the command to decide to organize storage sites deep in the rear. 6 months ago, ammunition and UAVs were kept as close to the front as possible to reduce delivery time. Now, trucks are unloading cargo much farther from the front line. Because of this, the assembly chain before a strike is getting longer and the routes are becoming more extended and vulnerable.
The number of Ukrainian drones at the front has changed. Their effectiveness and range of use have also increased, allowing them to strike targets that were previously out of reach. Currently, active strikes are being carried out on the highways connecting Berdyansk and Mariupol. Ukrainian drones are currently being deployed as part of an air interdiction campaign, specifically aimed at disrupting vital Russian ground-based lines of communication.
Several prominent Russian military bloggers have expressed significant concern. These tactical strikes are predominantly being executed through the strategic deployment of Hornet drones across the active combat zones. These unmanned systems have now become the primary tool for aerial operations, accounting for the vast majority of the precision engagements currently being carried out by the forces in this region.
Ukrainian fighters may be able to fully automate the Hornet drones within the next 6 to 12 months.
The undeniable fact is that the armed forces of Ukraine, and specifically their specialized drone units, have demonstrated a consistent ability to strike this critical highway. In general terms, this situation confirms the emergence and the strategic deployment of a new class of high-quality unmanned aerial vehicles. We are witnessing the beginning of the widespread use of advanced drones that possess the range and precision necessary for striking deep into the operational rear of the Russian forces, effectively disrupting their essential supply lines and logistics.
Russian electronic warfare can jam Ukrainian Hornets only if they are not using Starlink or do not have time to automatically lock onto the target. Ukrainian pilots patrol the roads up to 160 kilometers deep from the line of combat engagement. And now military supply routes to Mariupol and other frontline cities are under the full control of the Ukrainian armed forces, which creates a huge problem for the occupying troops.
A military blogger expressed concern that Ukrainian drones, supported by Starlink and with a flight range of up to 200 kilometers, are reaching the highway. The M14 Mariupol-Berdyansk-Melitopol-Henichesk is a key Russian supply route along the coast of the Sea of Azov in the newly occupied Crimea.
This, in general, changes and significantly changes the nature of the hostilities. This is because, at least within the context of the very near future, it is highly anticipated and widely expected that the critical supply lines for Russian troops stationed directly on the front lines, as well as those positioned along the active line of combat, will face significant obstacles and be very seriously hampered in their operations.
In recent times, Russia and Ukraine have focused on targeting and destroying UAV production facilities. The goal is to destroy the drones before they are even created. And in this regard, Ukraine seems to be having more success.
Over the past month, Ukraine has also intensified its campaign of long-range strikes against Russian drone production infrastructure. One of the largest-scale attacks took place on the 19th of April 2026, when Ukrainian forces struck the Atlant Aero plant in Taganrog, located in the Rostov region. The strikes on the Atlant Aero plant were part of a significant broader campaign against the strategic Russian drone production network. Later in the month of April, Ukrainian forces successfully struck the Barsarmat Special Purpose Center located in the occupied Zaporizhzhia region. This is an enterprise actively engaged in the complex development of drones, robotic systems, and advanced electronic warfare technologies. There have also been repeated strikes on the Progress plant located within the Tambov region. This specific enterprise manufactures critical sensors and electronics used in modern Russian drones.
Supply chain disruptions are seriously undermining the Russian army's ability to fight effectively, and strategic strikes deep into the occupied territories and the destruction of military depots are establishing favorable conditions for the deoccupation of Ukrainian territory.
Well then, now let's move to the Orikhiv direction of the front, the enemy's army. And here they're up to their usual tricks. In the Orikhiv direction, the enemy tried 8 times to advance in populated areas, the settlements of Sherbaki and Stepnohirsk. In the Pridniprovsk direction, our defenders successfully stopped 2 assault operations towards Antonivka. And furthermore, the Kremlin is preparing for another war. The simple fact of the matter is that a law was passed in Russia that specifically allows the army to be deployed to foreign territories under the pretext of protecting Russians. Analysts warn that this could be preparation for potential new military invasions. But where exactly? We will tell you more in our full report.
Russia may attack another country. The State Duma has passed a law allowing President Putin to use the army abroad under the pretext of protecting Russian citizens. In fact, this is the legalization of future military operations. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War note that this is not just a document, it is the preparation of an informational and legal basis for aggression. After all, the Kremlin has repeatedly used the claim of Russians being oppressed as a pretext for invasion, particularly in Ukraine.
This significant new piece of legislation which substantially expands President Vladimir Putin's legal authority to deploy military force beyond the borders of the Russian Federation under the guise of protecting Russian-speaking compatriots, as they officially term it, serves as a clear and unmistakable signal of Russia's increasing readiness to further expand its ongoing campaign of international aggression.
Now, the geography of potential targets has expanded. In the rhetoric of Russian authorities, the Baltic countries, Moldova, and other states where Russian speakers live are regularly mentioned. It is precisely there that Moscow may attempt to repeat a familiar scenario, and this is no longer just a theory. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russia has effectively begun the so-called zero phase of preparation. This involves restructuring military districts and creating new bases, particularly near the border with Finland.
First and foremost, we are discussing the Baltic countries, which the Kremlin still perceives as a severed part of its own identity. It is as if they are viewed as parts broken away from the body of the Soviet Union or Mother Russia herself, and are still considered to be its own territory. For more than 30 years, the narrative has claimed that there has been a systematic and ongoing oppression of Russian speakers living within these borders. And it is precisely in those regions that the concentration of these compatriots is at its highest. It is there that the Kremlin is continuously fostering significant tension. Many stories immediately come to mind, such as the incident with the bronze soldier in Estonia, and the unrelenting pressure on Estonia itself, specifically in Narva. There is also the widespread hysteria regarding the so-called Latgale People's Republic, in Daugavpils, in Latvia.
At the same time, other alarming signals are being recorded. In Europe, the number of acts of sabotage, provocations, and cases of GPS jamming is increasing. Analysts believe this is part of a hybrid preparation for possible future operations. Some experts remind us that the Kremlin made similar decisions before the annexation of Crimea and the full-scale invasion in 2022. Ukraine has already responded to the document. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that this law demonstrates the true nature of the Russian regime and in fact legalizes new interventions.
Foreign Ministry spokesperson Georgi Tiki called this decision aggressive lawlessness and emphasized that Russia is turning war into an instrument of state policy.
We can clearly see this illustrated in the specific example of the baseless accusations that were recently brought forward. The Russian Federation, through the implementation of such a broad and coordinated disinformation campaign, which was carefully constructed in April of this year, falsely alleged that the nations of Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania had provided their sovereign territories for the purpose of launching attacks by Ukrainian drones. Furthermore, in general, there were even more extreme claims made at various times about not just the unauthorized use of their airspace, but also regarding actual drone launches originating from within those countries, which is, in reality, nothing more than a blatant and complete lie. Yet we are currently witnessing this unfolding situation. And why exactly is the Kremlin actively pursuing such a potentially dangerous escalation of the war? It is increasingly obvious that this is a desperate attempt to fundamentally alter the entire course of the conflict, of a war that, in its very essence, has now become a profoundly difficult strategic dead end for the Russian Federation.
Moreover, Ukrainian diplomacy draws historical parallels, particularly with the rhetoric of Nazi Germany, which also justified aggression by claiming to protect its citizens abroad.
Further signals include statements by Russian officials, specifically accusing Finland and the Baltic states of aiding Ukraine. Analysts believe this aims to create a pretext for future border violations.
If Putin signs the law, it will come into force in just 10 days. And then Russia will gain yet another tool to legitimize aggression under the guise of protecting its citizens. A scenario the world has already witnessed, and one that could repeat itself in new countries.
That is all the news for today, but very soon on Front News. We will bring you new, unique reports from our journalists in the most intense and dangerous locations of the war, gathered so that you fully understand the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.